This Saturday on Diaspora Life, we highlight the story of Dr. Orago, a human rights activist whose research gets stolen while abroad and he decides to come back home.
The bus is packed, everybody is looking for a place to sit, but nobody wants to sit close to you. I remember one day I went to the barber shop in France to have my hair cut. And they stepped in and they looked at me and they told me, we don't do your type of hair. You get into a shop or a supermarket and the security people start walking around close to you, monitoring what you're doing. That happened to me twice.
From having his research stolen to facing racism and settling down later than his peers, Dr. Orago, now a lecturer at the University of Nairobi, has experienced it all in the diaspora. Hello and welcome to Diaspora Life. My name is Pasil Telewa. Dr. Orago is not your average Diaspora Life guest. He has fairly traveled the world and has experienced the best and the worst of being out of his homeland, Kenya, from South Africa to the Gambia to France, Finland, Geneva, name them. Dr. Orago shares with us the highlights of his time abroad in pursuit and acquisition of knowledge. Enjoy. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Your name and what you do?
Dr. Orago is my name. I'm a senior lecturer at the University of Nairobi, Faculty of Law, and I'm also a researcher on climate change and human rights, as well as generally a specialist in human rights. Yes.
Dr. Nicholas, I understand you've broadly explored the diaspora. If I say that, you know what I mean. So yes. Give me an overview of where you started before you went away for studies.
Okay, generally I've studied in Kenya for my primary up to undergraduate at the University of Nairobi, and subsequently I was able to get a scholarship to study for my master's at the University of Pretoria Center for Human Rights. One of the things with studying abroad is the challenge that comes with it. You're in a foreign land, and you're away from your family and your friends. Yeah. And what happens with those challenges is that when you get lost, especially in the first few days or first few months when you're away away from home. And South Africa has its own challenges, as we know. And one of the challenges is, of course, xenophobia. And the threats that you face as a foreigner in a country with black people who do not welcome you
Amazing.
To their country.
Perhaps
yes.
You can give me your own personal experience, because people here read about xenophobia, but from your perspective, Dr.
I haven't faced xenophobia, like violence on my person. I've been in South Africa several times. Because I did not only study for my master's and PhD in South Africa, I'm also a teacher at the Center for Human Rights, University of Pretoria, so I go to South Africa quite often.
Amazing.
So the threat that you face studying or working or even visiting South Africa is the high level of hate that you get as a foreigner from the local South African population.
The diplomatic hate.
Yes. So that then restricts you in terms of your social engagements with the South Africans generally, because you do not know when and where you're going to face a challenge, either of outward hate towards you or even violence towards you. So what this did, especially when we were doing our PhD in South Africa, is that it restricted your social life. So either you are in school and the hostel and the supermarket without quite interacting with the people around you. One of the experiences of our colleague who ventured into taxi business in South Africa, in Cape Town, was that he was called by a person to go and pick him up in one of you call them one of the informal settlements.
What nationality were they?
He was Kenyan.
Oh my.
Yes, he was Kenyan. Yeah. So he goes to pick this particular person, and then he's attacked and he's beaten up quite seriously. Why? Because he was competition for local business.
How are they able to tell that this is not one of us?
He's Kenyan. It's how you speak, and whether you're able to speak the local dialect or not able to speak the local dialect. And so he was called. They knew he was, because before you attacked, someone has to profile you. And he was profiled. He was attacked. He was hospitalized for over a week, and his car got lost
Wow.
in the process. And when he reported, there was nothing that was done. Almost like, you know, you're not one of us. Why are you doing business and competing with our own
Locals,
people
yeah.
in relation to businesses? So we've seen that not only in relation to the people that we knew in person, but we have also seen businesses owned by people from other African countries actually being attacked in the process. So it limits you, it restricts you. It also limits you if you're a person who wants to date a South African, because they will ask, why are you here to take our women, for example. And people
Yeah.
have been beaten for just dating a South African woman who another South African gentleman was interested in. So
Wow.
you get beaten for socializing, you get beaten for doing business, you get
Yeah.
beaten for almost everything.
And
So
perhaps did you get there when you were still single?
yes, I got there when I was still single.
Mhm.
Yeah, I was able to interact a little. But the thing with our program, the program that I was in, is that it brought 30 people from all over Africa. So it had a few South Africans, but it
Yes.
had Africans from all over
Yeah.
the continent. Kenya, Nigeria, Ghana, South Africa itself, the Gambia, you know, so we were many, Ethiopia. So we were able to interact with very many people and a diversity of people. So we did not feel as excluded as you would be if you were in a class with only South Africans, for example.
So perhaps
yes.
you tell me, I understand it's just not South Africa you've been to.
Yes.
You've gone to a number of countries. Tell me the other.
Yes, just after my master's, I went to teach at the University of the Gambia. It was actually my first job outside the country. What I got to experience in the Gambia was quite interesting. They're very welcoming,
Yeah.
and all that. But immediately I went there, I was invited to the dean's home for lunch. And when I got to the dean's home, I wasn't quite sure because I was served in a pot, and that pot had meat, had fish,
Yeah.
had chicken, and I was like, oh, I thought I'd left Kenya
Mashakura.
and Mashakura, and all of a sudden this food is being served, and it's being served in one pot.
Yeah.
It was cooked in one pot, and I was, what type of food is this?
Mhm.
Yeah, so yeah. Mashakura is just not in central
Kenya.
It's all over the place.
Yeah.
But it was one of the very interesting places that I had been to. Apart from the Gambia, I've worked in Geneva in Switzerland as part of a fellowship that I was doing with the University College Cork. So I was attached at the International Federation of the Red Cross. And my experience was that life as you know it here and life as it is outside there is quite different in terms of what you hear people say and how they live actually in the countries where they are.
Yeah.
So I was supposedly I was working in Geneva, but I could not afford to live in Geneva itself.
You know, when you told me about Geneva, all that comes to my mind is you getting there as an expat. So you're giving that high-end kind of lifestyle. Tell me, how was it?
It wasn't quite. I was a fellow, a research fellow.
Yes.
So not earning so much. And one of the reasons why the struggle was there was because of the tax.
Yes.
My stipend, as it is, was being paid from Ireland. And when I signed my papers, it was actually substantive enough to be able to take care of me living in Geneva. But when the tax came, it was 60% of the salary.
Wow.
And I wasn't even staying in Ireland, but I was being taxed at 60%. in Ireland. I wasn't enjoying any services in terms of infrastructure, in terms of healthcare, in terms of education in Ireland, but I was being taxed at 60%. So that made life quite difficult or tough. So instead of living in Switzerland, in Geneva itself, I decided to go and live in France, which was just across. So I had to take the bus every day from Monday to Friday, and I had to pay, of course, for the bus for the month. And what was interesting is in Geneva is quite cosmopolitan, and so there's no difficulty in mixing as a foreigner. But the part of France that I was staying in did not have many black people. So it was difficult to mix. I remember one day I went to the barber shop in France to have my hair cut. And they stepped in and they looked at me and they told me, we don't do your type of hair.
What did you do?
We don't shave your type of hair. We
Yeah.
shave a different type of hair. Your hair would not be able to, our machines would not be able to handle your hair. It wasn't because they couldn't shave my hair. It was because if I entered that shop and they shaved me, then I chase away the other clients that they would have, because you know what, we saw you shaving a black person, so we don't want you to.
That machine must be dirty.
Yes, exactly. So I ended up actually going to shave in Geneva instead of the part of France where I was living in. And the other experience that was always interesting is you get into the bus in the morning, the bus is packed. If you're lucky enough, you get a seat. But when you get a seat and there's an extra seat or extra seats around you, nobody comes to sit close to you. The bus is packed, everybody's looking for a place to sit, but nobody wants to sit close to you. So you end up, being excluded, not because of anything, just because of the color, the color of person that you are. And then when something that people don't quite say, when you travel as a male black person, you are at the end of the food chain, to say.
What does that mean?
When you travel as a black woman, it's easier for people to accept you because maybe you're married to a white man somewhere else. But when you travel as a black person, first, if you're married a black person, you're married to a white person,
it's even worse.
So you travel as a black person and a male black person, for that matter. Almost everything that you do is viewed with suspicion. So you have to be always very careful what you do, because you get into a shop or a supermarket and the security people then all start walking around close to you, monitoring what you're doing. If you're taking things and stuffing them in your bag without permission or without authority. And that happened to me twice in France. So one day I just stopped and asked, why is it that you're following me? I've been here several times, I've never stolen something. So why is it that each and every time I come, you stop me, you search my bag, and you ask me why I'm here and what I want to buy? Then from then on, they stopped.
Perhaps, Daktari, just to talk about African researchers talking, or rather coming up with issues that they're facing from the African perspective. You could just point out this specific case in point where your research was almost, deemed to belong to someone else, if you know what I mean.
What happened was that I was doing this fellowship, and I was based in the International College Cork in Ireland, but I was seconded to the International Federation of the Red Cross. And we had made applications for funding. There were 3 proposals that had been developed. Mine, there was a gentleman from Ireland, and then there was another gentleman from Italy. And so when our proposals were submitted, mine was funded. These other 2 were not funded. So I was then able to start my research. It was a 3-year fellowship. So in the second year of my research, actually the person from Italy who had had their proposal not accepted, requested that I, through my supervisor, that they take my proposal and they look at it and they adapt it so that they're able to resubmit the same. And I said
Someone
no.
actually stealing from you.
Yes,
Yeah.
I told them no, that was not possible because this was intellectual property, and using that without my authorization was actually a violation of my fundamental rights to my own intellectual property. But despite my refusal to give my proposal, they still took it, they used it, they sent it to the same funder that was funding me, and they got the same funding that I was in. And when this happened, I raised the issue with the organization, and of course, because I'm a black person and the person who was using my research was a white person, I wasn't taken seriously. So I ended up actually leaving the fellowship to come back to Kenya because I wasn't able to then work with people who did not respect me as an individual, who did not respect my work as a professional, and who could use my intellectual property for their own benefit without any concern as to the work that I had put into that proposal to the point that it was accepted. So I left. I came back to Kenya, back to the university to do my work, and yeah.
I'm sorry to hear
still
that.
working.
That's so serious. But what about
Yes.
the organization that was funding your research?
The organization
Did it
that
ask
was
for the
funding,
resources back, or how did it go?
I had already done substantive work by the time I was leaving, so I had published some of the material that I was needed to have published. So I submitted what I'd already published, and I requested that because of it was my supervisors that had violated my intellectual property, I did not want to continue working with them.
Yeah.
So they told me then I had to resubmit a new proposal to them on the basis of with new different supervisors and different institutions. When I did that, they told me the circumstances of the research had changed because there was a new research that was covering the same issues that was already being funded. And this was the same research that had stolen my intellectual property.
Yeah.
So they said, okay, because this person is already doing this work and you're already funding them, you cannot fund a third research on the same issues. So my research was the first research. Now his research was the second research, and my resubmission was now a third research. So in a sense, they took over my proposal, they took over my work, and they went on and worked on my project without me and without my authorizations.
Perhaps someone who has been listening to all this need to understand, where was Dr. Nicholas before they went abroad? Where did you start from?
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I've actually been a nomad. For example, I was born in Migori. I was raised in Homa Bay, in Siaya, and in Kisumu.
Yeah.
I've studied in, I think there's nowhere I've studied in primary school for more than 2 years in one school. And because my dad was a civil servant, and because of the transfers,
Yes.
we would go from place to place. So the only place that I stayed longest in an education facility was in high school, where I stayed in one high school for 4 years. But before that, I'd always moved. And so they say a rolling stone gathers no moss. So you also have difficulty creating friends because you know you're going to lose them very quickly. And the other thing, as an individual that has gone out to study, is that when you come back, your friends in high school and your friends in university have moved on.
Yes.
So you come back and you're on your own. You're calling people, you're looking for people, and they've moved on. People have married, they have newer friends. You come back and you don't have friends. You don't have a social life.
Yes.
And you have to start afresh because even your perceptions about issues is different from your colleagues or your friends previously. So almost you don't share much with the people that you grew up with. You don't share much with the people that you studied with. And then you have to almost be excluded from your own circle The challenge of then getting back into those circles becomes quite difficult, especially if you've stayed out of the country for a while. And out of the country for
staying
a while
outside the country, you know, made you a late bloomer in a way?
Yeah, I think I got married quite late. My firstborn had their birthday on the 7th of June, just on
happy
Tuesday.
birthday, just a few days ago.
Yeah, so that's,
mine is coming up on Sunday, so I'm happy you have a Gemini in your house. Geminis
yes, exactly.
are weird.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So,
is it a boy or a girl?
It's a boy.
Oh,
yes, yeah.
Congratulations.
So, thank you.
Yeah.
So you start late. Even in investments, you start late.
Yeah.
Maybe even in the level of interaction that you have with people is also different, because you then have to create new networks of friends, new social circles in order for you to be able to survive. And if you are an introvert like me, it's even more difficult.
Are you? I think you're just too learned.
No,
now perhaps you tell me, does going abroad, you know, change your way of thinking perhaps, that makes you believe that if you are just born, bred, raised in Kenya, your thinking could have been different?
Each and every experience that you have adds to your life and also shapes the way you look at life. Yes, the experiences that you get when you travel actually contribute to the type of person that you are, because your perception of things and your perception of importance of things changes depending on your life experiences. And when you have life experiences, they say if you've never gone out of your mother's house, you'll think your mother cooks best.
Yes.
But once you get out of there and you sample
other meals,
then you know that even the fish or the chicken that your mother cooks can be cooked differently. Differently, not better.
In a good way.
Differently.
Your mom is not hearing.
It can be cooked differently,
yeah.
and also still taste as good, having been cooked differently. So those experiences will almost always determine how you perceive things, how you conceptualize things,
yeah.
And how you approach life itself.
Parting shot to some of the Kenyans, young Kenyans watching you, looking perhaps to go abroad for their studies?
I'll say, if you have an opportunity, take it. But take it with the right mentality and with the right attitude, that whatever challenges that you're going to face in the place where you are, you're able to have the mental fortitude to actually overcome them. But never, in one way or another, never leave your culture, never leave your values, because it's your values that will be your beacon in each and every interaction that you have in life. If you lose your values, then you lose yourself. So if someone has an opportunity, I always encourage them to take it. Go out there and come back with the best. For my students that have gone for masters, I always tell them, please don't come back without a PhD. So that when you're coming back settling and doing your own things. And if you can get a job out of there, do it. But don't send money to your brother to build for your house, because when you come back, you'll faint.
Find no house.
You'll find no house, or you'll find a very.
By the way, talking about that, did you have any sort of experience of that nature?
No, not necessarily. When I came back, I came back and I did my building when I was in the country, and supervised, because they say character development.
Yes.
If you leave everything to a brother or to your fundi, then of course utalia. You'll get character development. So it's important that if you want to invest, save your money, invest in shares, invest in bonds. If you want substantive capital development, come and do it yourself. Don't send money to people, because you'll lose that particular
So as we
amount.
walk, I was very fascinated by the fact that you are the only two guys working with FIDA then. Which year was that? How was the experience?
That was 2007.
Yeah.
The experience was quite good. Getting to interact. Actually, most of the people that I worked with at FIDA, we still interact.
Mm-hmm.
There were seniors, because I was just coming from university. So there are people I look up to, and I've gotten a lot of advice, life support from them. And I think it's it's also shaped my thinking around gender roles. So at home, I still take care of the child. I carry them, I bottle feed them, and all that. And also just accepting the fact that women should also be able to achieve their full potential in life, and it's not just a man issue. Yeah, so.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ari, for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, hope to see you sooner.
Thank you.
Yeah. I hope you enjoyed Dr. Ari's story. Unfortunately, we have to go. That's all time could allow us for today. So join us again next week and every Saturday at 8:30 p.m. Kenyan time, only on KTN News, for stories of Kenyans living in the diaspora. And if you have a story you'd like to share with us, please write to us through diasporalife@standardmedia.co.ke or DM us on our social media platforms at diaspora_life or at KTN News KE. You can also follow me at Pasil Telewa on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube for more behind the scenes. Until next time, see you soon. Bye-bye.